Hello everyone, welcome to Success Education. Today we'll be doing the workbook solution for social science for standard 6, chapter number 2, that is journey from primitive man to settled life. Before that, if you have not subscribed my channel till now, please do subscribe it for more videos. So we'll be starting with the MCQs. First one, how was primitive man's life? It's option number A, nomadic life. Second, which weapon was not used by primitive man to hunt animals? It's option number A, gun. Third, in which state is Bhimbetka situated? It's option number A, Madhya Pradesh. Fourth, which activities were not started by primitive man? It's option number D, industries. Fifth, the primitive man means, it's option number D, all of the three. Sixth, which stage of human beings is called hunters and gatherers? It's option number A, the primitive man. Seventh, for which animals did primitive man wander from one place to another? It's option number C, deer, sheep and goats. Eighth, what age is called at the time of a life of a hunters, gatherers and wanderers? It's option number B, Paleolithic Stone Age. Ninth, with which technology did primitive man associate? It's option number D, stone. 10th, which of the following places found in Madhya Pradesh was inhabited by primitive man? It's option number B, Bhimbetka. 11th, in which type of caves did primitive man live for protection from rain and wild animals? It's option number A, natural caves. 12th, what suggests that primitive men were familiar with the use of fire? It's option number B, the remains of ashes. 13th, from which caves of South India have the remains of ashes been found? It's option number A, kwool. 14th, which was the invention that brought change in the life of primitive man? It's option number A, wheel. 15th, when the human beings started to live settled life, in which type of habitations did they live in the beginning? It's option number D, mud houses and thatch, that is hay. 16th, who was the first companion of the settled life of human being? It's option number C, dog. 17th, which two activities led primitive man towards settled life? It's option number A, farming and animal husbandry. 18th, where is Mahagedia currently located? It's option number B, Pakistan. 19th, remains of what have been found from Mahagedia? It's option number C, wheat, barley, sheep, goats and the stone implements. 20, in which ancient place of Bihar have the remains of buffaloes, bulls and implements been found? It's option number A, Chiran. 21, in which state of India is Inamgaon located? It's option number B, Maharashtra. 22, what kind of houses have been found in Inamgaon? It's option number D, round. Now we'll continue with question number 2, that is fill in the blanks. First one, primitive man used bark of tree and the skin of animals to cover their body. Second, primitive man lived in natural caves to get protection from rain and wild animals. Third, natural caves have been found in the Vindhya mountain range in central India. Fourth, nearly 500 paintings drawn by primitive man have been found from the Bhimbetka caves. Fifth, primitive man grew grains around the river banks. Sixth, primitive man started to make earthen pots to store the grains. 7th, initially primitive man made farming implements from stones. 8th, the remains of the wheat, barley, sheep, goats and stone implements are found in Mahagedia presently in Pakistan. 9th, Koldihava, the ancient place, is located in Uttar Pradesh state. 10th, the remains of rice, sheep, goats and stone implements are found from Mahagedia of Uttar Pradesh. 11th, the remains of human colonies and rhinoceros are found from Langle of Gujarat. 12th, Burjam and Gufkral, the ancient places, are located in Kashmir state. 13th, Mehergarh may be considered as the oldest village of ancient India. 14th, primitive man made barns in rectangular houses to store grains. 15th, the remains of the dead bodies of children have been found from Inamgaon of Maharashtra. Now we'll continue with question number 3, that is true or false. First one, primitive man started rearing violent animals with the beginning of settled life. It is false. Second, stone implements were used in Stone Age. It is true. Third, primitive man has drawn pictures of lion and tiger in Bhimbetka. It is false. Fourth, natural colors have been used in caves of Bhimbetka to draw pictures. It is true. Fifth, primitive man used iron tools. It is false. Sixth, primitive man used cloth to cover body. It is false. Seventh, primitive man had drawn pictures on the walls of caves. It is true. Eighth, the discovery of fire was revolutionary of the life of human being. It is true. Ninth, primitive man made wheel from iron. It is false. 10th, growing of grasslands increased the number of herbivorous animals. It is true. 11th, primitive man reared cattle for milk. It is true. 12th, primitive man made farming implements from stones. It is true. 13th, primitive man cooked food in metal utensils. It is false. 14th, the people of Mehergarh lived in round-shaped houses. It is false. 15th, the people of Inamgaon used to grow millet, that is bajra, and barley. It is true. Now we'll continue with question number 4, that is match the following. First one, wheat, barley, sheep, goats and the stone implements. It's option number 4, Mehergarh, currently in Pakistan. Second, rice and the bones of animals. It's option number 3, Koldihawa, that is Uttar Pradesh. Third, human colonies and rhinoceros. It's option number 1, Langle, that is Gujarat. Fourth, wheat, lentil, dogs and pit houses. It's option number 5, Burjam and Gufkral, that is Kashmir. Fifth, buffalo, bull and implements. It's option number 2, Shirand, that is Bihar. Now we'll continue with question number 5, that is answer the following questions in one or two sentences. First one, which type of crops were grown by the primitive man? The crops like wheat, barley, millet, that is bajra, rice, lentil, etc. were grown by primitive man. Second, which animals were reared by primitive man? The animals like dogs, sheep, goats, cows, buffaloes, bullocks, etc. were reared by primitive man. Third, what is the initial stage of primitive man called? The initial stage of primitive man is called hunters and gatherers. Fourth, why did the primitive man wander from one place to another? The primitive man wandered from one place to another in search of food. Fifth, who found the places of primitive people's habitation in India? Archaeologists, anthropologists and historians found the places of primitive people's habitation in India. Sixth, which type of weapons and implements did primitive man use? Primitive man used the weapons and implements made of stones, woods and bones. Seventh, why is the initial time of primitive man called the Stone Age? Since primitive man were associated with stone technology, their initial time is called the Stone Age. Eighth, how were the implements of Stone Age used? The stones as implements of Stone Age were used to cut the vegetation and to scrap the skin of animals. Ninth, which type of places did primitive man prefer to live in? Primitive man preferred to stay in good and large places where stones, woods and water could be found. 10th, which type of and how many paintings have been found in the caves of Bhimbetka? About 500 paintings of birds, deer, wooden spears, trees and human beings have been found in the caves of Bhimbetka. 11th, how can one say that primitive men were familiar with fire? The remains of ashes have been found from the Kurnool located in South India. Thus, one can say that primitive man were familiar with the fire. 12th, which discovery and which invention made a significant change in the life of primitive man? Discovery of fire and invention of wheel made a significant change in the life of primitive man. 13th, how did primitive man first learn to make the wheel? Primitive man learnt first to make the wheel from the trunk of a tree and its thick wood. 14th, the number of which animals started to increase with atmospheric change? The number of herbivorous animals like deer, sheep, goats, etc. started to increase with atmospheric change. 15th, in what kind of houses did primitive man live after living in a cave? So, after living in a cave, primitive man lived in the houses made up of mud, thatch and other materials around the growing grains. 16th, with what kind of pet animals did primitive man live? Primitive man lived with the pet animals like dogs, sheep, goats, cows, buffaloes, pigs, etc. 17th, due to what activities did the wandering life of primitive man come to an end? Due to the activities of farming and animal husbandry, the wandering life of primitive man came to an end. 18th, after the end of wandering life, what changes came in the life of primitive man? After the end of wandering life, the changes in food, clothing and shelters came in the life of primitive man. 19th, which farming implements did primitive man make from stone? Primitive man made the farming implements like spade or hoe, chisel, sickle, etc. from stone. 20. What was the food of settled primitive man? The food of settled primitive man was wheat, barley, flesh of animals, fish, roots and fruits. 21. Which places of primitive man's habitat did archaeologists discover? The archaeologists discovered the places of primitive man's habitat like Burjam, Gufkral, Hurangi, Mehergarh, Langnaj, Bhimbetka, etc. 22. Where were the remains of children's dead bodies found? The remains of children's dead bodies were found from the ancient place named Enamgaon in Maharashtra. 23. What was the shape of houses found in Mehergarh? What was found from those houses? The houses found in Mehergarh was in rectangular shape. Small storages for grains were found from those houses. 24. What belief does the evidence of a goat's burial with a dead person in ancient time indicate? The evidence of a goat's burial with dead person is found in Mehergarh. This indicates the belief or imagination of life after the death of human beings. 25. In which state are Bhimbetka caves located? Bhimbetka caves are located in Madhya Pradesh. Now we'll continue with question number 6, that is, give the historical reasons of the following statements. First one, primitive man lived in natural caves. In the earlier time, primitive man lived a nomadic life. They used to find places where they found the animals like deer, sheep and goats and water. Thus, they stayed in good and large places where stones, wood and water were found. Here they lived in natural caves to protect themselves from animals and rain. Second one, the use of fire led to the revolutionary change in the life of the primitive man. Ruins of ashes found in the caves of the primitive man in Kurnool in South India indicate that they were familiar with fire. As per historians, approximately 11,000 years ago, humans started using fire. Use of fire had revolutionized their life because with the help of it, they could cook the meat and eat, get light, and protect themselves from wild animals. Third one, primitive man's time is called the Stone Age. The life of primitive man was associated with stone. Their implements and weapons were made from stone. Their caves were also made of stone. Thus, primitive men were associated with the stone technology. Now we'll continue with question number 7, that is answer the following questions briefly. First one, which implements did primitive man make? Where did they use those implements? Primitive men made implements of stone, wood and bones. They used the stone implements to cut the vegetation and to scrape the skin of animals. They also made dress to cover their body from the skin. They used to make farming implements like spade or hoe, chisel, sickle, etc. from stones. Second, what impacts were seen in the life of a primitive man with the change in atmosphere? The herbivorous animals were useful to primitives in many ways, so they started to study their behavior. Due to the changing climate, grains like wheat, barley, millet, etc. were grown with the grass, trees and vegetation. Finding such crops useful, they started to grow the grains after collecting them with curiosity. The dog was the first companion of the settled primitives. Third one, state the activities of primitive man after they started to live a settled life. To grow grains at the place where water is available, to make the earthen pots or small barns for storing the collected grains, to collect the grains, fruits, meat and fish for food, to make farming implements like spade or hoe, chisel, sickle, etc. Fourth one, how did primitive man use animals? When primitive man lived the life of hunters and gatherers, they hunted animals like deer, sheep and goats and used them as a food. They used their skin to cover their body. They made friends with animals. The dog became the first companion. As a result, the cattle rearing activity was started. Now we'll continue with question number 8, that is answer the following questions. The question is, why did the need for settled life arise? The primitive man led initially nomadic life in search of food. About 12,000 years ago, wide changes in the atmosphere around the world led to the vegetation and grass root regions. As a result, gradually the activities of agriculture and animal husbandry started. Places could not be left due to agriculture because it takes time to grow crops. They need after harvesting, plants have to be cut off and grains have to be removed from them. For this process, one has to stay in one place. Grains such as wheat, barley and millet became useful food for primitive man. He started to plan animal husbandry. Thus, the need for settled life arose due to agriculture and animal husbandry. And here we come to the end of chapter number 2, that is journey from primitive man to settled life. I hope you have understood the complete chapter. If you have any doubt, you can write in the comments section. I'll surely try to answer all the questions. Thank you for watching my video and do subscribe my channel for more updates. Thank you.